Welcome. My name is William Messakar. I am a master model railroader in the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. I want to welcome all of you to the virtual layout tour we'll have presented today by members of the NMRA. So welcome to our tour, and I hope you enjoy it.
I'm Burr Stewart, and this is the monthly layout tour of the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. David Yadock lives in Renton, Washington, and is building a beautiful layout that we're all eager to see a tour of. Go ahead, David.
My railroad is called the Dry Gulch Western Railroad. It is a fictitious railroad loosely based on John Allen's Gorre Daphetid Railroad. There are a few things that make it rather interesting. One is floor-to-ceiling scenery, and just the railroad itself, where it's a design that is not really his design, but somewhat my design. So we'll continue on. The main line is approximately 500 feet. It goes from 28 inches to 60 inches off the floor. It does feature both HO standard and narrow gauge. It is a point-to-point, but I created an option for continuous running. So I can have runs, train runs, do loops. The loop probably takes about 45 minutes to run. And the main line is roughly 2 large ovals, and they're folded over on top of one another, kind of like exactly what John Allen did. The layout is about 800 square feet, and it occupies a 32 by 33 foot room space. My era is steam to diesel. But I do use a lot of modeler's license. So if you see some things in here that don't look right, that's okay. They don't look right. It's primarily the industry is mining operations, but there are some other industries on the layout. And the way I sort of modeled the Dry Gulch is that it's a bridge route to take railroad traffic across mountains. And so my railroad has a lot of foreign cars on it. So you'll see those in a lot of the pictures. Let's go to the basics, the nuts and bolts of the layout. I use Digitrax. All the throttles are radio controlled. There are 4 or 5 amp power districts. So there's 20 amps of power going into the layout itself. And then for tracking down shorts and things like that early on, I divided the layout into multiple power sections. There are 5 fixed control panels, and there are about 100 turnouts. There's mainly Walthers and Shinohara, but I have started using Pico because the Walthers and Shinohara became rather rare. The other thing is that early on, the turnouts that I used were not DCC friendly, so all of them had to be converted while they were in place, unfortunately. And all of them are powered by tortoise switch machines. Then let's see, track is microengineering. I use code 83 and code 70 for main lines, and 55 for the sidings. And the grade varies between 1% and 2%. There are some short, sort of steep sections, and the construction of the layout benchwork is L-girder. And I use 3/4 inch plywood with cork road bed. And yes, this layout does feature floor-to-ceiling scenery. Now let's go to some of the things here. There are 3 major cities on the layout and 14 smaller towns. Most of these I've named after either famous model railroaders, such as one town is named Allentown, another name is Ellison. And then some of the towns are named after some of my close friends, some that I went to school with, and so on and so forth. And this right here is the town of Wapwallopen, which is named after a very small town in Pennsylvania, which is where I'm originally from. One of the key things of my layout is that I have areas that are dual purpose. So I can use them for mainline running or for switching, depending on how the operating session works. So I sort of double the use of available space, which for even a large layout like mine, it helps. It really does help. When you walk into the layout room, in this photo, the door would be on your right. And if you looked over towards your right, you would see South Allentown. And this is built into the corner of a room. It hides a very large turnback curve and a spiral to bring the trains to different heights in the rest of the layout. And this also has one of my engine facilities. There are actually 3 engine facilities on the layout. Here's another view of the outdoor service tracks and the actual well, I can sort of see the turntable hiding there, but mainly the roundhouse. Directly behind the roundhouse is an access hatch that has a whole bunch of buildings that are put on top of it. So it's very well hidden. But I use that to pop up to service that turnback curve. Then once we leave South Allentown, if you look just straight ahead, you'll go and you'll see Newport. This is a port city. It has a car float. There is a shipping lane. It's still under construction, as you can tell. And it has a very weird 3-track yard, where 2 tracks you enter in one direction and 1 track you enter in the opposite direction. So it makes for an interesting switching operations for that yard operator. But it is quite functional, but it makes it a little bit of a challenge for that person. There also is a smaller 2-track sort of yard for the car float area. And you can see one of the control panels down at the bottom there. And here's just another view of Newport. The tall brick building there, which still isn't completed, is going to be the station and Railway Express Agency building. It sits on, as you can see, there's this big chunk of pink foam. That big chunk of pink foam can actually slide vertically as a giant access hatch once I get all the buildings in place and everything. So it will allow me complete access to the back of the layout, as well as areas by the engine service facilities for what would be Ellison, which we'll be seeing very soon. The other thing is, later on, when I was building the layout, I found that a staging area would be really good to have. Didn't really know where to put it. So I decided to put it up against the east wall of the layout room. And so there is a 3-track through yard there, staging yard, where I can actually hold 6 complete trains. It's about 16, 18 feet long. And here we go. Here is what would be the Ellison engine facilities. There's a turntable located there, and there will be probably about a 5-stall roundhouse. Unfortunately, right now, it's just kind of a storage area for all kinds of stuff. It is what it is right now, but all the track is functional. It's just that it isn't being used currently. And here we go. So this gives you a better view. Here's another one of the view of one of my control panels. And then you can see that 3-track staging yard in back, just how long it is. It's pretty good sized. And then let's see, yeah, that's about it for this view. Let's go on to the next one here. So this one, this photo shows Ellison, which will be the city of Ellison. And there, in that, tucked into that corner is a 7-track yard. It's a stub end yard, except there is one track that does go completely through. And so you can gain access from both ends of the yard. I wanted to follow John Allen's sort of approach of not making yards overpowering, because sometimes, you know, if you have a full through yard, it just takes over an entire layout. So this sort of condensed it into about, I think it's about 4 or 5 feet in length total, you know, which is a good size yard, but when you think about it, it's just tucked into a corner. So it's pretty well hidden, and the space is utilized quite well. I did have to go and move that yard because when I started operating sessions, a lot of folks were sort of complaining that the yard was too far back. So I brought it up forward to the front of the layout by about 1 foot, which helped a lot. So about 5 of those tracks are reachable with your hand. The other 2 are just used for storage. There is also a 3-track yard that is called South Ellison Yard, and that can be used for car sorting. So when we move on, there's another better picture of the yard with all the freight cars and stuff sorted there. But the next thing in the layout tour is the town of Gornitzka Crossing, and it's very close to that yard. It's probably about maybe 1 foot from the yard, but I put this nice little view block in with some tall trees and a short mountain, and it breaks up that space, and so it creates a separate area for a town. Next up, here's another view. So you can actually see how close the yard is to Gornitzka Crossing. It is very close. There's, in that town, there's a meatpacking plant, there's a stockyards, there is the 2-level station that was modeled after John Allen's station at Corsa and Cross Junction. And then I have a log dump area. And the other thing in this scene is over towards the left, there's a chunk of Paul Scholl's old layout that I used, and that actually hides a lift out service section. So that just goes straight right up towards the ceiling, but it weighs about 40 pounds because he used a lot of plaster and rock in his scenery. So it's a very heavy lift out slide up section. And then the little blue building there is actually called Scholl's Hideout, which is kind of a tavern thing in memory of Paul Scholl's. So next up along the line is Dry Gulch, the railroad's namesake. And here we have, there's actually 2 things here. The upper level is actually Wapwallopen, which is on the branch line track, but it almost occupies part of Dry Gulch. And so I'm getting kind of using 2 towns vertically separated, but using the space together to create sort of a large town. The directly behind that coaling tower and to the right of the two-stall roundhouse, there's going to be a also vertical lift-up section that I'm working on currently. It will get installed here, probably in the next month or so, and that will hide that sort of area, and there'll be like a town right there. And let's see, yeah, this is the terminus for the narrow gauge line that I have. Narrow gauge line is about 80 feet long. It just goes point to loop, so it's not anything spectacular, but it can create some havoc for operators once I get it really going. It was unfinished. It's still work in progress until I get that lift out section installed. I can't really do any of the scenery in front of it because I have to sort of drag that lift out section across that area. And so then there's another view of Wapwallopen. It has a couple industries. It has also a little area where they do granite mining, or it comes out of that one hillside, gets dropped down, and then a crane lifts the granite slabs onto freight cars. So it kind of makes it for an interesting little operating system too. And like it says over here, there's about 5 inches of vertical separation between the two towns, but it does take about 30 feet of track to get to that town. So now between, if you see, there's like a little red fire station up there, up to the top of the picture, and then there's to the right of the picture, which is Potter Flats, and that was what was called Sow Belly on John Allen's layout. And if you notice, right up towards the foreground here are 4 bridges going through a gulch. That was the famous French Gulch of John Allen's layout. So there's, let's see, I've got a mine in there, and I've got the oil rig. So there's some operating capabilities with Potter Flats. And here's another kind of different view of it. That main line, it is a dual purpose main line. It serves the branch line and the main line. So there's a crossing right there between this little narrow valley that you can go into the branch line. And right in the foreground is a small hamlet of Raade Springs. And there's the mine at Potter Flats. And yes, I did do some funny mine naming. There's Yorson Mine, Better Be Mine. There's a whole bunch of comical names I've used for mines. So let's see. So this is Raade Springs. It features 2 mines. I Got a Mine and Can't Be Mine. And then down there is the little gun shop named after Woody Matthews. Woody just passed away recently. So it's kind of in memory of Woody. He was a member of the 4D. He was also a member of the gun club that I belong to. So all of this is kind of crammed into a really tiny space. It looks like there's a lot of space, but it doesn't really occupy very much space, maybe 2 or 3 square feet at the most. I've been pretty good at cramming things in to small spaces. And in the background is one of the large bridges that carries the main line. That is a model of the Canyon Diablo Bridge, and it's about 5 feet in length. So there's a view of my version of French Gulch. And again, the trains, they're going over some rough terrain. And each of these tracks going across French Gulch carries the main line. So that's where, even on John Allen's layout, you had the sort of the 4 folded over loops that, went in the section, and this is the one section where they sort of all come, are close by. This was a very difficult area to complete scenically because there's just so much going on here. There's so many tunnels, there's so many bridges, trying to fit some buildings in and scenery, and also just the separation in height. It was a challenge. And here is the town of Alpine. This is sort of up against the back wall, the north wall of my house, and it features 2 mines. There's Is-It Mine way over there. You can actually see, and just out of the picture on the right, or left, I mean, would be Better Be Mine. And the station is kind of it's a likeness of John Allen's Angels Camp station. It's close, but no cigar. It's a little different. And next we go, we leave Alpine, and there you can actually see Better Be Mine tucked into the corner there. And here is the Canyon Diablo Bridge, sort of a full view of it. Like I said, it's a little over 5 feet in length. It's about 60 inches off the floor, and it acts as the leapfrog to literally the other side of the room. There are 2 sort of leapfrog bridges to carry the main line, and this is one of them. Directly in the left-hand corner, that's a giant mirror. It's about 2 feet by 6 feet, and so it reflects off the other side of the room. So those mountains that you actually see there, and clouds and such, really aren't there. It's a mirror image of the clouds and mountains from the other side of the room. And that also followed John Allen's design. And here is the second bridge of like I said, the Leapfrog Bridge. And this is based on the Vance Creek Bridge that's located down in Shelton, Washington. And as I mentioned, yeah, both bridges are, over 5 feet in length. They're around 60 inches above the floor. This one is built out of styrene shapes and some brass support tubing. The other bridge, the Canyon Diablo Bridge, has a central core of 1-inch square aluminum tubing, and then the styrene is just built around it. So the bridge structure itself, the styrene doesn't carry any of the weight, just the aluminum tubing carries the weight. And here's another view of that bridge. And then the town of Hayes River is directly below it. It's still under construction kind of scene. This whole alcove area is still, being worked on. Hopefully I'll be able to get started on that soon, because I want to try and get it going and have most of the scenery area completed by the National Narrow Gauge Convention next year. So we'll see how it goes. It's one of those things where you hope that you can get it done, but well, everything takes longer than anticipated. And so then continuing on, here's my high bridge with the train just entering it. This view is the valley between, that sort of, if you go around that mountain to the left, you'll actually walk into Allentown, the city of Allentown. So this valley was one of the first areas I actually completed with scenery. It was an interesting little thing because I wanted to have it be sort of a wilderness type scene, with wild scenery, mountains, a high pass you had to cross, and depth. That was one of the key things that I was looking for. So that waterfall way back there is about 8 feet or more from the front edge of the layout. And the clouds that you go and you see on the upper portion of the picture, those are actually three-dimensional clouds. They hang from the ceiling. And I did an article a few years back on that, how that was done. And then if you look close enough and hard enough, there's actually a giant mirror there and back, which reflects most of the right-hand portion of the photo that you're looking at. So it makes it so that the entire layout seems to just keep right on going. So that's one of the interesting little features. And yes, I cannot lay claim to that. John Allen actually did the same thing on his layout, although he used a smaller mirror and a little bit different way of hiding the mirror edge on the top portion of the mirror. There is a town back there. It's called Tallyn Pass. You can sort of see it, but it's kind of hidden back there because it is quite a ways. There's a better view of Tallyn Pass. There's a glance snow shed that trains go through to get to it. And there's also a level fall snow shed further back in there that if you sort of look the right way when you're actually in person visiting the layout, you can see it. And let's see, yes, the other thing is that it does have snow that was modeled with just white spray paint. So here's a better view of Tallyn Pass tucked way in there. That's actually taken from a different angle of the layout. And the station is a scratch-built version of the South Lyon station. That really has a cool witch's hat roof, which I always admired. And the design of that station, or the instructions from that station, came from Kalmbach's Bridges and Buildings book. So that's where that's from. It was one of my first models that I built too. So here's just an overall view again of that area. There's quite a few bridges. I think in this scene there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5 bridges. One's kind of tucked away there. It's a through bridge, but yeah, lots of bridges, lots of deep canyons, lots of mountains, lots of action. So that's the key to my layout. Let's move on. So this is the large mountain. I really didn't want to have that large of a mountain, but it hides 2 giant support posts for my house. So it had to be that big. You can actually see, I don't know if you can see, There's one of them right here, and then the other one is directly right at sort of the front of that mountain. And the good thing about it is it really provides an excellent view block. It divides the layout room quite well, and so it helps with creating, you know, a sort of town city scene, and then the surrounding wilderness, sort of out there traveling in the middle of nowhere type of scene. There's some tiny view blocks too. This, I had to have a picture of this bridge. This is one of my first models that I did. The bridge is actually very strong. There's actually a steel support that runs right through it. So you can actually, for the most part, you know, you could probably have a small person step on it without damaging it. But I thought I would do it kind of a weird way of building it. But it is partially scratch built. I used some of those, I can't remember the name of the bridge kits, deck bridge, girder deck bridge kits. And then the rest of it was constructed out of styrene shapes. But this also follows one of John Allen's bridges, which I thought was really cool with the curved bottom of it. The other thing is that to the left of this, there's a nice little hillside with a bunch of tall timber trees, and that acts as a view block. And there is a very narrow valley that goes through there. You can hardly see it. Most of it's covered up by the one tree sort of dead center in this picture, but the narrow gauge line goes through that very, very narrow valley. This sort of goes and gives you another view again, sort of looking up at the sky. Again, that little view block hides a lot. There is also a second bridge that carries the Allentown bypass track. So you can literally just not see Allentown at all if you take that line. It just goes right past it. And it can also be used as a very, very long passing siding, because it's about, I think the entire track length there is about maybe 15, 20 feet. So you can actually hide some trains there if you need to. Here's an overall view of the area. And there's Allentown with its very tiny sort of control panel. This is kind of a deceptive city because it's not very big, but what happens is, the way I've done it is this picture, it also sort of meshes in with South Allentown across the aisleway. And you can see the doorway there in the middle. There's a 3-foot aisleway. So it creates a single cityscape. Allentown is kind of a cool little area because what it does have is it has a Y. So locomotives can be turned there and run back. John Allen's original design was a dead end. It dead-ended it out there. And so you couldn't turn locomotives, where I have the capability of turning them. And let's see what else there. That's about it. That also gives you a nice view of on the left-hand side, a view of the yard at Newport. Here's looking at the opposite side of Allentown towards the layout. And this gives you an idea of the room depth, and also just how there's only like one little area that, sort of, if you don't look at the sort of ceiling valance type things, it really gives you an idea of how you can combine some scenes and create tremendous depth of view. So if I was doing this, a staged good photo rather than just an overall photo, I would have chopped out the ceiling portion and gotten rid of that, and then also gotten rid of some of the layout portion to the right there that sort of gives the layout away. But you can see how the one portion of the layout becomes the background of this whole scene. So here's another view, overall view of the layout, and that shows part of the Dry Gulch operating panel and the two large bridges that hop, skip, and jump over the layout to get from one side of the room to the other, and then shows the large view block mountain on the left, and Dry Gulch, Wapwallopen, and the other areas of the layout on the right. And I think that's it. Yep, there we go. So that's that portion.
Well, that was great. You've pretty much taken up the time. Would you rather just take a quick question or two? And I can put the videos in the YouTube recording.
That's fine.
Yeah. Well, thank you, David. That was terrific.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Hello again. This is another reminder that this virtual layout tour has been brought to you by members of the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. And we hope you've enjoyed it, and we want to encourage you to, again, find out about the NMRA online. Both PNR and NMRA have an excellent website where you can get information about joining and participating in this and other activities like our clinics that are held all over the region. So thank you for joining us today, and wish you great modeling.